Do you need to warm up your Harley engine before riding it? Let's talk about it inside.
RevelatorAlf.
Hello, welcome to RevelatorAlf. Hope you enjoy the channel and the series of videos. Please like, share, subscribe, leave loads of comments below. Check out the website, RevelatorAlf.com, and all the links in the description below. So in this video, I'm talking about, do you really need to warm up the engine before riding it? On page 77 of your owner's manual on the Softail range, it says you should the engine should be allowed to run slowly for 15-30 seconds before you open the throttle, and away you go. Now, obviously, it really depends where you are in the world as well. If you're operating really cold temperatures, it's the first start of the day, you probably may want to run it for a little bit longer than that. If you're in really hot temperatures and it's in the middle of the day, maybe not so much. What's the point of actually warming up the engine? Well, essentially, all you're doing is getting that oil to lubricate, to be pumped around the engine, to lubricate all the parts as they're moving, so it assists in the cooling. Obviously, Harley engines are air-cooled, but if they're stationary and they're not lubricated with oil, then they're going to overheat and bang very quickly. The lubrication part is really important because that actually reduces the wear and tear of the engines. Now, when is an engine most likely to blow, explode, break apart? Well, the most likely time is on a rapid acceleration or a rapid deceleration. So if you consider, let's say, I don't know, drag cars or drag bikes, the likely time they're going to really blow is either when they launch or when they're off the gas, and that's the time. If an engine is allowed to gradually build up its RPM and its load, and then gradually decrease its RPM and its load, then that'll be the best way, obviously, for it to warm up and get lubricated gradually, and then obviously cool down as well. Anytime there's a rapid change in RPM and load, that means there's a rapid change in temperature. And what can happen is the components can have a thermal shock. And what happens is you have dissimilar metals, for example, they expand and contract at different rates. And then you can have a rapid change in temperature, which cause the material not to be able to expand or contract in a uniform way. So therefore, that leads to cracking and obviously component failure. So that's the reason why you would have a gradual acceleration and deceleration, and that's why you would have it operating within limits. That's why you have the lubrication. That's why you have the engine warming up. But 15 to 30 seconds can appear to be a long time, especially if you're operating in colder temperatures. You may need to warm that engine up for a little bit longer. You know, if you're getting up really early in the morning and if you've got loud pipes and then you've got your engine running for a long time, it won't be long before the neighbours will come around with a lynch mob, you know, pitchforks in hand, ready to have your head for disturbing them in the morning. But the reason I brought this video, because I wanted to explore, do you really need to do it? Do you really need to warm up the engine? Lots of people would say, yes, you definitely need to warm that engine. Now, is it likely to blow straight away? Well, I think, as I say, if you just start up the engine and just ping it straight away, that's when it's likely to blow, because it hasn't had time for lubrication, effective lubrication and effective cooling of all the internal components. However, if you just start the engine and just keep it at very low revs and just pootle off in first gear and second gear, I doubt you're going to do anything to that engine at all. The only thing you're going to do is affect the longevity of that engine. But if you keep the revs low and the load low on the bike, it's not going to do anything. Now, 15 to 30 seconds is actually not a long time. It's only if you're clock watching, it's a long time. If you press the starter, you get yourself all, you know, comfortable on the seat. Maybe you've had a quick walk around the bike as well, if you're really going to do that, let's say, and you can be on your way. But it's actually not the warming up of the engine in the stationary mode that you really need to be concerned about. It's actually the warming up of the engine as you're riding off. As long as you don't put too much load on that, that's fine. Now, another question came in over the emails and comments section about the engine making strange noises on startup. Now, one of the reasons why the Harley engines, the Milwaukee 8 engines, I should say, make strange noises on the top end is because actually the valve train at the top, or the lifters and the valves, haven't actually had enough oil been pumped up there as well as yet. So there's almost like a delay between the oil is fully circulated around the engine, and there is a little bit of a, I wouldn't say a knocking, but almost like a tapping sound, a clicking sound, if you like. That is perfectly normal and is within tolerance. So that's nothing to worry about. Other people have asked me about changing oil and changing sounds because of changing oil. Okay, so here's another issue that you need to factor in as well. When you have your first 1,000-mile service, they do change the oil, and then you may experience some changes in sound because effectively they're changing the grade of oil as well. So that may affect the sound that you're hearing, but also you've got to factor that your engine is starting to loosen up a little bit. That initial wear is gone and it's starting to loosen up, and you will get slightly different sounds, different tones from the engine. This is all part of the bedding in process, how you've broken in the engine, how you've gradually increased the RPM. This is all part of getting the components to bed in with each other, wear in with each other. Let the oil do its lubricating and cooling. Therefore, afterwards, you can drain all that oil with any contaminants, with any small particles that have worn away. Fresh oil goes in at a different grade, and that's your operating oil. Now, there are different oils according to the temperature at which you would operate in. So if we go to the owner's manual, we'll quickly discuss that. Okay, so if we go to page 121, it gives you a list of the oils that you could use for your engine depending on what kind of journeys that you're doing, and also in the kind of ambient temperatures that you're operating in. Now, essentially, depending on the temperature, you want to match that with a type of oil that has a different type of viscosity. In other words, the thickness of the oil. The thickness of the oil will determine what kind of sounds you're getting from your engine, and essentially what kind of lubrication quality and cooling quality that you're getting as well. Okay, so if we look at some temperatures here, above 30 degrees, 30.2 degrees, is actually saying that you should get a 20 weight or 20 W50 weight oil. Above 39.2, say 20 weight 50. Above 60.8, this is all Fahrenheit, by the way, it's 50, just 50 weight, and then above 80, it's 60 weight. Fuel. So basically above 27 degrees it's 60, above 16 it's 50, above 4 it's 20 W50, and above -1 degree Celsius it's 20 W50. Okay, so essentially what you're getting is the changing of viscosity for the normal ambient operating temperatures. What it's also saying here as well is that it's low temperature lubrication, so check engine oil often in colder climates. If your motorcycle is frequently ridden less than 15 miles in ambient temperatures below 60 degrees Fahrenheit or 16 degrees Celsius, reduce oil change intervals to 1,500 miles, 2,400 kilometers. So lower ambient temperatures require more frequent oil changes. So basically it's all to do with the cooling temperatures, the viscosity, how that affects with the engine components, how they're enabled to increase their temperature and reduce their temperature, but also the amount of water vapor within the oil and within the case with the engine itself as well. And maybe with colder temperatures that's going to require more condensation, less evaporation of that oil, that water from the oil I should say. Therefore you're going to have a greater chance of corrosion within the engine. Now, we're not talking about overnight rusting within the engine. We're talking about the longevity of the engine. So that's why they're saying, actually, bring your oil changes back down to 1,500 miles, 2,400 kilometers. What do you want? You basically want a thinner oil, if you like, for colder temperatures, and a thicker oil for hotter temperatures. Why? Because you still want that lubricating factor. You don't want it to be too thin or too thick. A thick oil on a cold engine is going to make it quite hard to start. It's going to make it quite hard to be lubricating around that engine. So if you're operating in really hot temperatures, you actually want a thicker oil, because a really hot temperature will actually make the oil go really thin. If you're operating with a thin oil already, then that hot temperature is going to make it too thin. It's not going to cool properly, and it's just going to be, you know, it's not going to have that lubricating quality, you know, where you're going to have two surfaces that are going to skim off each other. There isn't going to be that barrier between there, which a thick oil will enable. Hence why hotter temperatures, thicker oil; colder temperatures, thinner oil. Simple as that. The reason, as I say, you have the warming up process, the warming up of your engine, is to allow for this lubrication, this engine cooling. Your actual riding cooling is coming from the airflow predominantly, but you're still getting the engine cooling from the oil circulating through, and obviously through the oil cooler as well. Now, somebody has also asked me about, what about if your oil cooler becomes blocked? Is that going to change your oil being cooled? Well, yes and no. That's why you need to keep your oil cooler clear. If you put a mesh or barrier in front of it to protect your oil cooler, you just got to make sure that's clear as well. But it's still, remember, you're still going to get some ambient cooling from the side of the oil cooler around the rear of the oil cooler as well. It's just not going to be as great. But obviously you want to keep your oil cooler as clear as possible, so that helps in the overall cooling of the oil within the engine. But the most engine cooling is going to come from the airflow itself. Anyway, so I hope this helps. I hope this answers a few questions for you. But let me know in the comments what you think as well. But just bear this in mind. Where you are in the world will determine your choice of oil, really. What kind of riding you're doing, what ambient temperatures you're doing. And according to the oil that you have and all those other factors will determine what kind of sounds you're hearing from your engine as well. Obviously, if it's really abnormal engine sounds, you need to get that checked out by a dealership or a mechanic or other people as well. But you know, if it's normal engine sounds, if you have a slightly more sound on engine start, that's perfectly normal until the oil is fully lubricated around the engine as well, especially around the valves area at the top of the head engine, the head of the engine as well. Anyway, so leave loads of comments below. Let me know what you think. I hope that this answers some questions. You know, as long as you're just not really putting high revs straight away on an engine, you should be absolutely fine. It's just that that's 15-30 seconds. Let the oil build up its temperature a little bit. Let it be lubricated. Then you should be fine for the full duration of the life of that engine as well. Right. Catch you on the next video. Please check out the website and the links in the description below, and I'll catch you again. Ta-ra.